Hey, it has arrived. Eaton Barr's book on hell. This is fantastic, by the way. This is really, really good. I've been listening to it, and podcasts are available free on Amazon at the moment. Excerpts. Now, this is the real deal. It's a great read. It's you've got lots and lots of writing in there. It's like almost like a PhD thesis, but it's very, very readable and very, very beautiful. You don't need specialist theology to go at this. Here's one of his other books, The Gospel of Divine Abuse. Ethan Barr brings that dynamism to the scriptures of somebody who really knows Hebrew. He's a native Hebrew speaker. He's from the Jewish background. He's Jewish, as well as being Christian. And, therefore, he just brings new color to the mix. He just brings new dimensionalities and gets us out of these stalemate positions that we can find ourselves in as Christians. The more time I've spent on the road of trying out different denominations over the years, the more I see how entrenched and divided Christians really are, and how close-minded they are within their traditions. They all claim to be reading the Gospels neat and pure, to be reading God's word neat and pure, but actually what they're doing is reading it through the narrow lenses of their particular tradition. Protestants read in a Calvinistic, Augustinian, Calvinistic, Lutheran way, for example. The Orthodox are reading in a Palamitic, hesychastic, ascetical, mystical kind of way, and the Catholics are reading in a Petrine, magisterial, specs on. And it's like all the time we forget Jesus was Jewish. He had Jewish beliefs. He had Jewish beliefs to the very core of his being. And that doesn't mean we should adopt the law. Of course it doesn't. Ethan Barr doesn't talk about that. But, Jesus didn't preach the hellfire that, we're led to believe he did. But these street preachers boldly go and preach on the streets, and all they're doing is putting themselves under duress of mental health issues and putting everybody else under duress, or just turning them further and further away from the God who is love, the God who is forgiveness himself, the God who is mercy to the very core of his being. And you can find these ideas in all the traditions, like our sins are like a speck thrown into the ocean, I think one of the great Orthodox saints said. But in reality, what happens is judgment kicks in. People get very judgmental, very fearful. Step outside this tradition, you're going straight to the flames. Very fearful, because this idea of eternal conscious torment has been used as the ultimate weapon to control people. But, perfect love casts out fear, but perfect fear casts out love. You can't, Ethan Barr brings it up, but you can't force somebody to love you by making them fear you. You either love me or you're gonna burn, dude. There ain't no love in that. There's no grounds to love. If I'm busy thinking, well, my granny wasn't a believer, she didn't go to church, maybe I don't know about my granddad, I don't know about my uncle, I don't know about my mother or my father, I don't know. Then all the time, God is, it's not a God of love. It's a God of fear and worry and anxiety. And this then translates onto Christian lives where they're trying to press gang their family into the same straitjacket they find themselves in. Come on to my evangelical church. You must come to church. They're not ready for it. And God knows. Which is why I call this video, we're in the school of life, not in a weird escape room. Those escape rooms, escape if you can. People do it for team building. If this life is an escape room, escape to paradise, then what are we going to learn here? We're going to learn to shut our eyes and keep away from people. We're going to learn to fear the world rather than embrace it and serve it and bless it. And, either we'll be besought with constant, am I in, am I out? Or even if we have this kind of this kind of Protestant notion of once saved, always saved. Hey, I was saved in 1985, man. We're busy worrying about the rest of the planet, hopefully, because according to that theology, everyone else is going to fry, but you and your clique, you and your particular evangelical tradition are going to be okay. Because, hey, after all, you've got the right formula. You've got the right set of beliefs. Ethan Barr brings freshness because he's like, look, if you're telling me, he says, he began to realize as a Jew, most Jews are not going to accept the Christian gospel. If you're telling them that, hey, Adolf Hitler, he gassed, he murdered so many Jews, right? Well, he's in hell. Okay, eternal, conscious torment for all eternity. But guess what? According to the same exclusivist mentality, 99% of those Jews might be in the same boat. You going to expect the Jewish population, the people of God, to accept that? Ridiculous. Jesus wouldn't be a man of good news. He would be a man of utter terror. And that's, many of the... I had a student today said to me, the Jews, aren't they the ones that killed Christ? No, that's no more fair than blaming the Romans for the state of Britain today. Aren't you the ones that invaded 2,000 plus years ago? We'd be like, they'd laugh at you. They'd say, well, that's nothing to do with me. You can't put that on me. Again, this judgmental mindset creeps in where we think God is narrow. He's a Protestant. His ideas are deeply Protestant. So he hates you Catholics. He hates the way you are. He hates you Muslims. He hates you Hindus or whatever. And so we're judgmental. We see it all over the internet. We're unforgiving because we don't really believe in the forgiveness of God, the deep, unmerited forgiveness of God, not based on a theological formula. What happens if I get dementia and the formula is destroyed? Do you know? What happens if I thought I had it, but it was actually the devil, the author of lies, the prince of lies that was messing with my head, so I actually had it back to front. A lot of people, Ethan Barrett talks about people with this notion, like they've had experiences, past life experiences, near-death experiences are more likely of hell. And, even Padre Pio and these saints and things, he doesn't mention them. But he talks about people's visions and whatnot. You can't rely on that. The devil himself is a deceiver, a liar from the beginning. He would love us to live in perfect fear, which casts out love. And when you hear about all over the internet these macabre stories of near-death experiences and I went to hell and blah, blah, blah. Look, this author is not saying there is no hell, there is no punishment, but it's not eternal. And the end result is not punitive justice. The end goal is restorative justice. Zephaniah 3. God is mighty and powerful to save, and he loves to save, and he's able and capable to save. He desires the salvation of all human beings. He desires the salvation of us all. Christ came to reconcile all things unto himself, Colossians chapter 1, I believe. And on it goes, and saints have come across this over the ages, like Origen had it, Gregory of Nyssa, Isaac the Syrian, I'm sure there were many more, believed in the universal reconciliation of all of the universe, all of creation. Now, Ethan Barr doesn't quite go as far. He kind of says, look, it's above my pay grade to say what happens to the devil in all eternity, or Hitler or whatnot. He says, look, that's the overgeneralization fallacy, where we pick one example of utter cruel person and we say, yeah, see, like that's the norm. No, the vast majority of human beings are, trying to get through the school of life, working hard, learning by their mistakes, and, growing and improving in various different ways over time. It's, life isn't one big theological exam. It can't be just, reduced to that dimension. God has all of eternity to rectify the distorted human soul of our loved ones, of our neighbors, of those around us. And then we can get on loving them and serving them the real good news gospel, rather than these caricatures of a cruel and vengeful God whose so-called justice, but just punishment, will triumph over his love. People don't like talking about these things because they gasp and think, well, you're taking me outside my tradition. But I thought you were a biblicist. If we're biblicists, there's only Bible in here. There's only Bible, pretty much. And it's all strong. It's got that strong Semitic, Hebraic, deep roots. Jesus didn't speak Greek. He didn't speak Latin. He was a Jew, Hebrew of Hebrews, a true Hebrew of Hebrews. And that's where we get the balance. That's where we start to get beyond the trenches, the entrenchment, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, arguing back and forth. God exists in my box, but not in your box. Only my box, so going to heaven. Come and join my box if you want to get to heaven. Love is a joyful, beautiful thing. And when people live in love, they don't settle for fool's gold. They don't settle for scraps off the floor. At a Christmas banquet, we don't settle for garbage that's fell on the floor. We want the real thing. And those who are living love don't fall for base and crass things like pornography, etc., because they have the real thing. They have love. And it's similar to this. God is love. And those who know the love of God, they just want to share it. And they just want to live in that love. And this love grows and grows. It casts out the fears, the anxieties that we human beings are riddled with. And it has us on strings. Our governments want us fearful, afraid. But also, unfortunately, church leaders down through the centuries have wanted us afraid, have wanted us fearful. And it leads to cruelty. It leads to cruel manipulation of people. This idea that we have to slavishly hold to the doctrines of men, the doctrines of a particular tradition, and if we dare to question them, our salvation is at stake. We're walking a very rocky road. That's not pedagogy. I'm a teacher myself, so I know that that's not how you teach kids. You teach kids, you create a safe environment, and then, you let them discover, and you rejoice in their different opinions, their different ideas, their different takes on things, especially in my subject, teaching theology, religious studies, philosophy. It's not, unless you come to the same conclusion as me, you're going down. I love you. So be prepared to have your mind blown. Particularly recommended this book, but this one is also full of promise as well. Very, very quickly then, what can you expect to find in them? 300 and something pages of great biblical, mind-blowing stuff. So he starts off, what is hell, philology of hell, pagan views on hell, hell in early Christianity, medieval period, modern Christianity, models of atonement, Jewish models of atonement, original sin theology, the God that can't stand you theology, does a sin against an infinite God merit infinite punishment? That gets 10 pages. Hell in the Torah, hell in the prophets, Gehenna, Jesus is hell. What does he mean by Gehenna? That's 10 pages. Eternal punishment, 13 pages. Sheep and goats, Lazarus and the rich man. Stuff like outer darkness, weeping and gnashing of teeth, that people often think, well, that's it. See, hell. No, not at all. Again, he'll go into that in nearly about 10 pages. Aren't we born again to avoid hellfire? The lake of fire, sulfur and smoke in Revelation, that gets nearly 20 pages because it's the go-to text, but it's apocalyptic, it's symbolic, and it's pointing all the time. The Old Testament is drawing from Ezekiel, it's drawing from the Torah, it's drawing from the Old Testament, left, right, and center. So this notion of eternal damnation, it's just not to be found in the Bible. And Ethan Barr does a cracking job at showing this. He does a cracking job as well as showing how it affects our mental health, these doctrines, how it promotes cruelty within religion, how it has promoted anti-Semitism and cruelty. You know what I mean? Oh, you're the Christ killers or whatever. You know, I had a student say it to me today about the Jews. Weren't they the people that killed Jesus, you know? And it's just like, this happened with narrow minds. This notion of a cruel God who wants vengeance, whose justice is punitive justice for all eternity rather than restorative justice. He's very keen on Zephaniah 3, that God is mighty to save. And he talks about, how in Zephaniah you see Sodom and Gomorrah are remade, reconstituted, all people coming to the God of Israel with a new language, a new worship, and with new hearts. This is a God who longs to save and who is mighty and powerful to do so, not a God with a great big stick beating people for leaving a particular tradition, for receiving sacraments elsewhere. I've been there and had those warnings from church pastors and priests over the years. God is a teacher in the great school of life, and we are not in a perverse, macabre escape room. You don't teach that way. God is a father, and you don't teach your kids and make them your children by having them live in the scepter of perpetual fear of punishment if they step out of line. No, they shouldn't need these warnings and these chastisements. You know what I mean? There comes a time when I don't need them, because even if the pub is next door, I ain't going out getting blutered. Whether I'm getting a baseball bat for it over the head or not, I ain't doing it because I don't desire to do it. I know God's love, where I'm evangelizing even without words because I'm in love. And the world says, wow, that dude, he loves God. He's experienced God. There's a peace about him, which I don't know. It's not just a word salad. It's not just a word game. It's not just playing some institutional loyalty thing. Okay, I'm blethering now, but you can see how much there is to get from this book. A new way to look at things, stepping outside of our individual traditions to find a God who's deeper and bigger than these denominations. Even the great denominations, we can still love them, we can still appreciate them, but without being slaves to fear, controlled by the fear mechanisms of pagan, Greco-Roman, and medieval accretions, either in Protestantism, Orthodoxy, or Roman Catholicism. And I will worship in all three and with all three groups, no problem. God is love, working and teaching all, including outside of the Christian fold. in the great school of life. Hopefully that's helpful. God bless.